Welcome to episode 3 of the Wonder Zone podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am not your host, Arcadia, and I am joined here today by your real host, Mr. Schmendy. How you doing, Schmendy?
It's the beginning. It's the beginning of everything for this console.
Yes.
It's finally happened.
I'm so excited. We are super late. As of recording, it is January 25th, so we are over a week late to reacting to the actual reveal. But I still want to talk about it because I still want to know where you stand on the whole thing. And honestly, more than anything, I'm excited for the entire hype cycle to start over again. So I am
For sure.
not
It's
ankle
been too
deep,
long.
not knee deep, not hip deep. I am like completely submerged in hype right now.
Same.
So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to what you have to say. So
Me?
starting off today, I want to know
Fire.
what you think about the name Nintendo Switch 2.
Honestly, it's the most. It was the most simple way they could have done it. It was also probably the best way they could have done it, considering the Wii U. I know a lot of people. I've seen a lot of discourse online about the name. And some people think it's like, oh, it's not creative at all. It's like that kind of is the point. That was kind of the point of the system. We need.
Yeah, the name was definitely a bigger.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying it needed to be this. It needed to be Nintendo Switch 2. I didn't see any other way this would, work.
Yeah. I know the name was a way bigger point of contention now because of the failure that the Wii U was. Like the Wii U isn't even their most. It's not even like the first time they did a direct sequel. I've heard people talking about Super Nintendo Switch because of the Super Nintendo. Because I didn't really think about that. Like the Super Nintendo was literally the same thing, where the NES was like a pretty big hit for its time, and it was followed up by just a stronger, better version. And so Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Super
Nintendo Switch would have been cool. I think. Just personally, I think that would have been a cool name. Yeah. That would have been cool, but I think Switch 2 just feels better to me. Like,
Besides the fact that, like, the entire community's just been calling it that. Like, all of the leaks we've seen, everyone's just like, oh, the Switch 2. Because it's just like, yeah, whatever. It makes sense.
I remember back when, like, we didn't even know it was going to be a Switch-like console, and everyone was still like, oh, it could be a Switch 2, and now it's a Switch 2. And I'm honestly, I'm very content with that. I think that means a lot. Just like for the direction that Nintendo is going with this console, I think them just calling it flat out Nintendo Switch 2 was like, hey, this is a sequel console. This is like the successor to the Nintendo Switch. We're not playing any games here. This is just up front.
We will be.
Oh, we'll be playing games, but we ain't messing around here. This is what you are here for.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was the best way they could have done it.
Yeah, it's just also the gaming landscape is just different now. Like Super Nintendo might have worked like back then, but like, Sony's been naming their consoles just like numbers for years now. And no one really seems to confuse the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. So,
yeah.
I don't think it's really worth like being scared over. People have been like, this is the worst possible name that they could have gone with. I genuinely don't understand that at all. Like, the only thing more straightforward than like branding is numbers.
my like thought process for that type of comment is like, I guess they think that's a sign of them not being as creative with like maybe things like the UI or like whatever stuff like that. I don't know. It's like, what happened to the charm and like creative and like more wacky Nintendo that I used to love back in the... Like, it's still gonna be there, I think. It's just, for the console itself, I think Nintendo is kind of transitioning now. We had the Switch, start of a new era. Nintendo's pushing forward with this, like, super revolutionary piece of hardware. Now it's time to level that up and bring it close enough to on par with current generation stuff to where it can both play Nintendo games, their first party outing, and improve them a ton, but also be able to play things like Elden Ring or like I know Final Fantasy VII Remake has been a super rumored game for the longest time, but I think that's the direction I think Nintendo wants to go. That's where I want them to go. I don't want them to lose that charm, of course, but being able to strike a balance, find that happy medium between like wacky, crazy Nintendo and this is a genuine system that can compete with what else is on the market right now, both in terms of consoles with the big three and other handhelds.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like that's definitely like where they want to take it. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that the original Switch could improve on, and we'll get into that more later. But I do think that like the Elden Ring, the Final Fantasy remake, and I've heard Red Dead 2 those are all going to be like the potential Skyrim titles of this thing.
Skyrim, Doom,
I feel like
Wolfenstein, like those games were crazy launch year.
Yeah.
And if we get like more of those, if we start getting like the more current gen stuff, I know we've touched on this in previous episodes, but I watched Rogers Base's video earlier today about like Switch 2 predictions, and he started listing off a bunch of things like games that could be like huge system sellers. He listed stuff off like Final Fantasy remake. The other one was Baldur's Gate 3. He said could come to the system, which
I would love that.
That would be cool for those who actually care about that game. But like seeing games like that are like winning Game of the Years, winning like all these awards, and like being things that most people are looking into, like Elden Rings or like better versions of the sports games. Like I would kill for Madden to actually be on the console. But then again, also like actual up to par versions of FIFA, or now known as FC, or like NBA, because those games have been running off of outdated hardware and outdated software for years at this point. And I think what I really want to see out of this console, this generation, is for Nintendo to go crazy with third-party support. I'm talking everything they possibly can that will run well on the console. I'm not trying to force it to play something like Black Myth Wukong where it's gonna chug every frame. Like, I think it could maybe it could work. I don't know, but like I want it to be.
We don't know like the full specs list of it, so it's
for
possible.
Sure. It's all
like I feel like
now.
they're definitely gonna want to get games like that. Like if they can get Red Dead 2 working and things like that, it's like they're older. But the fact of the matter is, it's like Nintendo is working with hardware roughly 2018 level, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
And the reason that that's like so important is because one, technology hasn't really improved in terms of like visuals over the past couple of years. Like you could see the differences side by side, but when you sit down and you play like Spider-Man PS4 and then you play like a PS5 remastered version, there's like a little bit of a difference. But like, at least to me personally, it has to be side by side for me to notice. And the other big thing is like they're working with like custom made chips now, so even if like the power level isn't quite like modern day consoles, it's more back then.
They have stuff
it's still
to be able to make
we
up
also
for
have
that.
like modern like hindsight as well. Like we know how to develop games for that. Like I'm sure if we went back and started developing games for the Super Nintendo again, we could get a lot more in there because we're just way more familiar with the tech by now.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
It's also like we have tips and tricks, and like we know the ins and outs of the infrastructure way better now than we did back then, because back then it was still new. Like back then we were still figuring it out. So, and that plus the Nintendo is just also known for like just getting the most out of their hardware in general. Like
Absolutely.
8 Deluxe is crazy pretty. And it's like,
and then games like Zelda have these gigantic open worlds where it's like there's no way they should be running on a console like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Those games are incredible. I love those.
Same.
What I was gonna say, I want to wrap back around to what you said about like the Nintendo charm, because I do want to get back into the trailer a little bit later and stay on track.
Sure.
But
we will absolutely
I feel like one of the big things this generation is the third-party support, and I feel like a lot of what people are known Nintendo for is like the creativity, and it's like the whole like people are skeptical, like, oh well, we're afraid that Nintendo isn't going to be creative anymore. We're afraid that like the Switch is just going to be so powerful that it's just like super iterative, and they're just going to keep going down this road like PlayStation. But like I feel like most of the time when people look back on like Nintendo hardware that they say has like that charm, like 3DS, Wii U, Wii, those were all super weak, and Nintendo had to work within like those limits to make what they had work. And I think that's what people mean by that charm. Because it's like, you know, the Wii was so revolutionary because even if it didn't cater to like the most hardcore gamers out there, it still like pretty much revolutionized motion controls. Like everyone wanted a piece of motion controls.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Wii U, it's like as volatile as it was for the company, it was really fun. And I think everyone that I know that has ever played one looks back on it fondly.
Yeah.
Because, they just figure out like new ways to play games.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of the Nintendo charm doesn't really come from the fact that they're like, working within limits and working with weaker hardware. It's the fact that they like think outside of the box in terms of like changing how we interact with games, which is like something I've been thinking on personally a lot recently, where it's like Sony and Microsoft have gotten themselves into like this arms race where it's like who can make the stronger console, who can make, the more powerful machine. And Nintendo doesn't really do that, but they're iterating on the Switch in a way that is just an arms race kind of thing, like where it's just the same thing but stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I've been so excited, I've really just ironed out my thoughts on this.
Yeah.
The reason I'm so excited for the mouse thing for the Joy-Con is because it's just a use of the power that I'm really, really excited for. Like Joy-Cons, like, having them split apart in like tabletop mode or just like playing on the TV without a grip, it's so much fun. Like motion controls are so much fun. And it's like, there's just so much you can do with that kind of technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like the Switch makes games fun to play. And I feel like that's one of the biggest reasons why is like it just changes how you interact with video games. Like Labo is one of those things where it's like, yeah, only Nintendo could think of that because it really does just change the way you play games. And I feel like that's one of my biggest gripes with the gaming industry right now is that it's really just homogenous.
It's very stale.
Like, there's not really much innovation in the way of like, new stuff. Like VR blew up and that was really cool, but then there's like, they don't really push the medium anymore. I think like most other companies, at least in the big three, like Microsoft and Sony, are just kind of like trend chasers. They don't really innovate. Like Sony just canceled a bunch of live service games because they saw like the failure of Concord and they were like, yeah, we don't want to do this anymore. Like they really don't have like any direction or vision. And I feel like that's part of the reason people love that Nintendo creativity is because these people know what they're doing. Like they're like, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if you could have a mouse? And I really just want to throw that out there because I'm just really excited for the prospect of doing things differently, even if it's just a stronger console. Like you don't have to be different than what came before you. You just have to be like, innovative enough to change the way people think about games and interact with games. And also just like, sharpening like the tools you already have. Like as long as the games are good, it doesn't matter really. And I think that's like a lot of games have been coming out recently that don't involve like a bunch of Nintendo gimmicky stuff like motion controls or like HD Rumble or whatever. And they're good on their own, but like I think that's partially why I'm so excited for the Switch 2 is that we're gonna have the best of both worlds. Like we don't lose that Nintendo creativity. I'm sure they're gonna find plenty of like creative ways to use the hardware.
Exactly.
But they're also they're not sacrificing anything else to get that anymore. You're not giving up like, third-party support to the degree that it was in the past. Like in the past it was like if you wanted to port a game to a Nintendo console, you had to essentially remake it. Because they're just so notoriously weak that it doesn't even matter how much you minimize about the game. You just have to make it new.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is this upcoming generation, they're just going to be able to like go day and date with like new releases, at least for like the first handful of years. And they're also still going to have like an infrastructure they're familiar with and like a gaming peripheral that is, limitless enough so that they can still have fun with it and like do wacky stuff with it.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm really excited for.
I think that's like the sweet spot, I feel. That's why I'm like, that's partially why I'm super, super excited for this console in general, is because, the industry's been so boring recently. and I want this to not only shake things up, but Nintendo having access to games like the newer Assassin's Creed, or like Call of Duty Black Ops 6, or the Final Fantasy VII Remake, or, you know, any of those games that like most people are buying on the other systems, having the possibility of having all of that under one system that is powerful enough to be taken with you wherever you go is just like, it's so like, oh my god, this is actually happening. Like, this is like the sweet spot. I feel like this is the sweet spot. And that, to tell you the truth, that I feel is part of the like what's new with this system, because the Switch was such a crazy big like innovation in gaming on its own, changing the way you interact with your games in so many different ways. Like, not even just the fact that it's portable and, you know, dockable. The like you said, like you mentioned, the controllers, you can play with them like in the grip or off, like on each of your hands, and you can just like lay down, or like how was it Yoshiaki Koizumi like laid on the couch in the Switch presentation. It was like you can release the tension from your arms and relax, like that type of thing. I use that shit all the time. Like, that's one of my favorite ways to use the console, and having that but iterated on, just, I think, was not only the most obvious way forward for Nintendo, but like also the one I think I wanted the most, because like we could go back to a home console like type thing with Nintendo. You could do so many other different things, but the Switch has so much potential that has yet to be tapped into, that I think stopping at one iteration just would not do it justice. And I think the Switch 2, if not fully, is a huge step in fulfilling that potential. And I am very excited to see where that goes.
Of course. And this is a good segue back into the trailer, because a lot of what we're saying is really going to be, it's a really big make or break on April 2nd. So, as we know, there's a Nintendo Direct for the Switch 2 on April 2nd, followed by a hands-on event in a handful of cities. The only one I really know off the top of my head is New York, because that's the one that we applied to go to.
Yippee!
But a lot of the, outside of the rumors and stuff like, oh, it's going to be strong enough to play these games, a lot of what I'm thinking is either outright confirmed or is very, very likely, which is also a big reason I'm excited. So, to briefly recap the trailer, it goes over, it shows you the normal Switch for scale in the beginning, and then it basically shows you the physical, like, form factor of the Switch 2. Yeah, it you know, zooms in on this, on like pretty much all around the edges. It shows you what the Joy-Cons are like. They tease a little bit of the Hall Effect sticks and the mouse functionality.
I don't even know if that was a Hall Effect tease, because the right Joy-Con just like, it has a similar thing where it's like the camera goes up to the buttons, clicks the buttons while the background turns orange, and then goes to the stick. I don't know if that's a tease. However,
I think they're alluding to it because of how they treated the because of how they treated like the mouse thing right after. Like, the thing about it is that both of those things we only know because of leaks, and especially given that there's like attachments for like the mouse Joy-Cons, it's kind of just like, I feel like they know that we know. Assuming that video was made sometime after all that blew up.
I'm sure it was mid-development, if anything.
Realistically, I feel like they're gonna expand on it, and they're gonna point to that trailer and be like, "Yep, that's what this was." Like, that's just, I don't know. They really did not go in depth all that much. We got to see, you know, the new form factor, the way the Joy-Cons click on. There's like a connector, and the SLSR are magnets.
They're also, the buttons are also like 3 times bigger.
Yeah, the Joy-Cons are bigger. They have like accented colors, and there's 2 USB
let me touch on that ports. Real quick. I don't know how I feel about the accent colors on the Joy-Con.
I like them. I understand why people don't. I could go either way, really. If they had like neon Joy-Cons, like Switch 1-esque neon Joy-Cons, where they just kind of inverted it, where like the body of the actual Joy-Con is colored, and then like everything else is just black or white. I mean, I don't really feel passionately either way about it.
I think as long as there's like that mix of both types of Joy-Con, I think I'll be fine. But like, I hope that's not like the only type of option available. I wanna see them go crazy with. I know I touched on this before, but I want to see them go crazy with the Joy-Con and Pro Controller, like variants this generation. Like I need to walk into a GameStop and I need to see like how Sony has it with like all the DualSense variants on the back of like the back of the wall. I need that for Nintendo.
Yeah. There was this mock-up of a white Switch 2 going around that I
saw
thought
it,
was
yeah.
really, really nice. I think it just makes those colors pop way more.
For
Like
sure.
it looks amazing. I would love a white one.
That would be cool.
But yeah, I mean, realistically, the reason they tried to do it, I feel, is just to make it look like a more sleek piece of tech. They're going with, I feel like, especially considering the angle they're taking with like more power, you know, more third-party games ported over, that kind of deal. I feel like they're just kind of trying to appeal to like the part of the industry where it's just like this is not like a toy, like it's just a device in your house. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? It's way sleeker. It fits right in with a lot of smartphones, a lot of tablets, like computers. The gamers love their LEDs and their fancy lights and all their rainbow colors and all that. But by and large, most things in the tech world in general are just like muted blacks, whites, grays, that kind of thing. So I think that's the angle they're going for. Also, someone pointed out that it's like even if you get colored Joy-Cons, the inside of the system, like the where the rail used to be, those magnets are still going to be red and blue. Someone pointed out that it's just the poles of a magnet, and I think that's really awesome.
That is pretty cool, yeah.
Like the positive and negative charge, like that's just the coolest thing ever to me.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so I honestly don't really care one way or the other about the colors. I would get a white one if there's a choice, but if there's not, I don't really care. I don't even think I'd buy extra Joy-Cons, honestly. I think I'm perfectly content with the accent colors on the black.
Absolutely. I just know I'm gonna be going crazy with all the variants.
The last thing I really thought was interesting about the actual trailer overview itself was the fact that, are you familiar with the PCB leaks that we had like months ago?
Run over them again.
So there was this photo of supposedly the PCB, which is a primary circuit board for a Nintendo Switch 2. It was basically just a picture of it on the table. The Switch 2 shell was there, and that's where the real speculation started, where we're going to have magnets. Like there's just magnets straight up sitting in there on where the rails would be. And that was pretty much it. I think it was around the time that the Chinese YouTube channel uploaded a video going over like their 3D printed model, if I'm not mistaken. It might be a little bit newer than that.
I think they were around the same time at least.
Yeah. So if you go back and look at that leak, and then you compare it to the actual trailer of the Switch 2, not only is it extremely accurate, like it is pretty much a one-to-one copy, but also there is a tiny little dot on the top of the Switch in the trailer that if you go back and cross-reference it with the PCB leak, it looks like that could be a microphone. Like there would be it looks like there's a microphone slot there.
Really?
So, yeah. So I'm thinking that gives credence to the idea that that C button is a chat button, and that there's going to be like, you know, actual either voice chat functionality or some kind of like voice activation thing or something. Whatever you do with a microphone, really. But that was like the last thing I thought was really interesting about the trailer that the leaks hadn't already told us, or at least that is confirmed from the leaks.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I'm very, very excited for that.
For sure. I just like, you know, going over the actual like trailer, I think the way they did it was honestly perfect. They didn't need to go like all out crazy with the reveal trailer like they did for the
perfect.
Well, they didn't have to go all out with the trailer this time like they did with the original Switch, where they had like all the live action shots of people playing it everywhere, because they've already gotten their point across. With
yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Like state of the system, how it's used. They didn't have to be like so like, for lack of a better
So
term,
blunt.
in depth. Yeah, so blunt with it. I think having that, like, the 3D render and like seeing the Switch 1 change into the Switch 2, like that was almost perfect to me. I really liked the way they did it, the way they handled it. I liked the way it was edited, showcased, the whole 9 yards. I really liked the music. The way it was edited was great. And I'm a little bummed that we have to wait until April for more official confirmation, but that's the way it's gonna be. So
Yeah, that was a big issue I had, and it's not even like an issue with the trailer, really. I just don't really know. We'll get to release date and like our predictions later on, more in depth. But I just can't, for the life of me, figure out why they're pushing this cycle back so far. I just like, we've been through all of this. Like, oh, they don't need to show like everything. Like the Switch 1 trailer really nailed it in that you can do whatever. Like it showed NBA, it showed Splatoon being played in like this giant arena. It showed Mario Odyssey on the rooftop thing. It showed the guy walking his dog with Zelda.
Yeah, now that it's like the best-selling console of all
Mario Kart
time,
in the car.
minus like the DS and PS2, they don't need to do all that again. They just need to show us what's different, and I think they did that well.
That's true, and I totally agree. Like they showed all those games, and then like Mario Kart and Skyrim in that first trailer.
Yeah, that was
which
huge.
was like we all agree they don't need to do that again. But then on the same token, we also don't need this long of a cycle for the entire thing to begin with. Which is why I'm so hung up on the idea that it's going to release in May. It's partially wishful thinking because I just want to get my hands on it.
Yeah.
But I really just can't imagine they're going to push it back into June, or especially not July. Obviously there's going to be new stuff with it. Like the potential microphone, the mouse functionality, the Hall effect sticks, those kinds of things. Like the new UI, we don't even know the game library for the damn thing.
Yeah.
There's obviously a ton of information to divulge about it. But I feel like, given that this was a first look trailer, and sure, that's all it needs to be. But if they really wanted to, they could have shown off a little bit more of the hardware, a little bit more of the games, the UI, anything. They really have the opportunity to. Everyone's ready. Everyone knows it exists. And then, to push it back to April, I can't imagine it's going to be radio silence until then. I don't know. With this whole 2 thing going on, February 22nd might have something going on. And then, the fabled Pokemon Presents that may or may not exist, but probably exists. The rumored Nintendo Switch 1 Direct that's going to happen supposedly in February.
I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't see it. I don't see it being
I don't know.
a thing. There's no way they do that.
Whatever ends up happening, I just can't really vibe with the idea that they gave us such a bland, nothing, suggestive at best trailer for this console, and then they plan to not talk about it until April, and then that's where they're going to do everything. I can't imagine they're just going to,
yeah, well,
I'm sure that Direct would be a banger.
Yeah, that's what they did with the original Switch. It's the same type of time.
Yeah, but then again, the original Switch had a way bigger, way more in-depth first look.
Yeah, that's true.
They split it up way more evenly. There was more information to divulge about the Switch 1, but they offloaded that over the course of months. They were talking they had that first look trailer. It was we got 6 games in there. We saw pretty much every method of play you could use on it. The only thing we really didn't know back then was the price point, the release date, and then they told us about NSO.
We also didn't know about the UI
more games. Yeah, but still, there wasn't really much to talk about the UI for the Switch 1 anyway.
That's true.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, even back for the Switch 1, they had a longer hype cycle, at least compared to what I would imagine for this. And even then, they offset kind of their information by splitting it up into little bits and pieces. They showed us a ton in that first look. And I'm just a bit puzzled by the idea that they're not only pushing their first look into 2025 in general, but then to give us pretty much nothing, and then to push everything back into April. It could work. I still think it's coming out in May, late May, because realistically, after that April Direct hits, what else are they going to show us? Like, I imagine there's just going to be that, like, April Direct is going to be like 80% like UI, pack-in software, maybe like hardware specs, and then like some game teasers. Like, they're going to show off Mario Kart. They're probably going to start with a big game, end with a big game, and then everything in the middle is just going to be like, you know, like details about price point and release date.
Yeah.
And then there's also probably going to be another Switch 2 Direct in like August, September. So it's not even like, I just feel like the longer they push this back, they're either going to have to knock another Direct off the end of the year. Like, our September one is probably going to be pushed back to like November or something. Or they're just going to cram a ton of stuff super, super close together. Like, this thing is going to be officially shown off in April, released in like May or June, and then like a month or two after that, we're getting another Direct full of games focused on the Switch 2. That seems a little bit spotty to me. Like, they're just, like, summer is going to be crammed full of stuff, no matter which way you slice it.
Absolutely.
And that's partially exciting, but partially confusing from like a business standpoint.
A little bit, but
like,
I don't know.
Like, even the Switch 1, it's like, you know, they had a ton of games in like the first year of the Switch 1, but they were all spread out like about a month per game. Like, you know, everything kind of had room to breathe. Like, you weren't releasing like, you know, the launch titles wasn't really anything to write home about outside of Breath of the Wild, and that really wasn't even an exclusive.
I don't see them doing anything like crazy year one because they're starting halfway through the year. If you know what we're predicting is correct. I know they're gonna go crazy for Mario's 40th. I hope they do. But like, other than that, we might see like a Splatoon or a Metroid, games like that. But it's not going to be anything like super crazy until we hit 2026, and then they like actually get the ball rolling with their first full year on the market. I think it's gonna be. I
definitely don't even think we're seeing Splatoon this year.
I don't see it either. I'm just saying that as an example. It's like, hey, like, we're gonna get other types of games, but they are releasing this, halfway through the year at the very best. And
yeah, like at the earliest, it's in like late spring.
Yeah, so. At the earliest we see that then. So we might at this presentation we might see games that, you know, go into 2026. That's my guess. I think that's we do see stuff like that here.
Maybe. I don't think that's gonna happen in April.
I don't know. We saw stuff like Xenoblade 2 in the Switch 1 presentation where it dropped like very tail end of the year. Stuff like, I think Shin Megami Tensei 5 was announced at that presentation, and that didn't come out until like 2022, 2023. All of the Nintendo first party outings came out that year, but that was like a year-long spread. If they're doing a presentation like this in April, which, let me add on to that, I think they're doing it then because that's the day after, that's like a couple weeks after their last like confirmed Switch game release comes out. So I'm assuming they want to give that a little bit of time to breathe, and then once that comes out, they go.
What do you mean?
Xenoblade X comes out in March.
Are you suggesting that the April 2nd Direct and like a Switch 2 presentation are going to be different things?
No, I'm just saying the fact that they're doing it in April in the first place is probably because Xenoblade X comes out on the 20th.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. They announced the system on the same day that Donkey Kong dropped. I don't really think they care.
That's true, but that's just the announcement, more or less. Like, they're not going to start advertising the thing like crazy until after Xenoblade comes out, and I think they did that on purpose. But otherwise, I do think we see not just year one, like 2025 games, but we see stuff that could come in like spring or maybe even like summer of the year after. That's my guess.
Maybe. I think that a lot of that is really just going to be like September Direct. I think that this April Direct is going to be way more hardware focused.
No, I agree.
In the sense that, like,
I absolutely agree.
Like, I think Nintendo, especially after like Tears of the Kingdom, they really have tried to crack down on announcing games too early.
No,
like they don't want another Metroid Prime situation.
I agree on that. What I'm saying is it's not going to be like fully 2025 games. We're going to see like a couple of outliers. It's not going to be enough to be like, wow, nothing is coming out this year. But we might see like one or two games that's like, oh, hey, yeah, this is going to come out in like spring or summer of 2026. But that's like a ways away. You have Mario Kart and 3D Mario coming up soon. I think they're just gonna give us enough to have like at least a year long roadmap ahead, and that's kind of what I want to see. But yeah, even if we just see up until the end of 2025, that's honestly kind of fine too.
I'm of the opinion that they are going to pack this year with a ton of first-party new releases for exclusively Switch 2.
Yeah.
And I don't think, like, I think that if we hear anything about 2026, it won't even be like a quarter. It'll be like next year. It'll be like what Metroid Prime 4 Beyond was. It'll say
absolutely.
a year and that's it.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking that, like, given Nintendo's anti-scalping measures, they're projecting 20 million units in the first year, which is ridiculous because that is 3 million more than the Switch 1 did in its first year, and that system came out months before this one is going to.
Yeah.
So they're projecting super massive first year, and I just don't see that happening unless they're extremely confident in their library of games.
Mm.
And you don't get that kind of confidence by having cross-gen titles and ports like that. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, especially because they
internally personally like, I really don't put that much stock in Xenoblade.
Oh no, for sure. They're just getting
their plans too much.
No, I know. I'm just saying that's probably why it's so late. Either that or the fact that they're doing a similar structure to how the Switch 1 handled their first look to presentation to release timeline.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that's another hey, this could probably be why they're doing it this way. Maybe that's why they're releasing Xenoblade when they are. I have no idea. I just want to play the funny
it's really weird
game and then get excited for the new console. Like that's kind of my timeline for that.
Yeah, it really is confusing, especially considering like what I just laid out about the entire the directs that typically happen at the end of summer kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like they are projecting such a massive year, but they are giving up so much of their time.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm not confident in them. Like, I'm of the opinion that it's like, people that are whining about the name, people that are whining about like the iterative nature of the console itself, like it's just a stronger thing. Where's the innovation? Like, the reason that they're down here and they're up there, like the reason that we're all down here and they're all up there is because they know what they're doing. They are aware of what they're building and they are confident in it.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is their timeline. I think that the bulk of the higher ups at Nintendo, this is their first console launch. Like, this is their first time doing this kind of thing. Because, back in 2017, it's like they still had like Reggie. I think Japan was kind of like Nintendo Japan was trading hands a little bit because Iwata had passed away 2 years earlier.
Yep. It was like a year and a half by the time the Switch presentation rolled around. And I think, oh god, what was the guy's name? There was someone who was like, interim president of Nintendo and was not like fully transferred over by the time the thing happened.
Yeah, but I mean, even back then, it's like a lot of the plan was probably laid out by them anyway. Like, they were gearing up. Like, the Wii U tanked, and they needed it fast. Like, Switch 2 probably had or Switch 1 rather, probably had like the fastest turnaround rate of any console. Like, the Wii U was like 3 years old at that point, and they pushed that thing out the door so fast. It was like, I had never seen, like, the people were talking about, like, quality control. Like, my Switch is broken, it's making these awful noises, it's glitching.
Yeah.
People just like sticking the things on the wrong way. That's more of them than the Switch's problem now. But
really
like,
funny
by and large, the
to think
Switch
about.
was like, they pushed that thing out the door pretty fast, all things considered. And I feel like most of that had to do with the idea that pretty much everyone at Nintendo kind of knew they had to jump ship pretty soon. So I still feel like even in the situation they were in back then, a lot of the people that were fairly experienced with that kind of thing were still there and still making plans for it. This is entirely new. Like, it's been so long since we've had like a new mainline piece of Nintendo hardware that, like, most of the people that are there or at least in like executive positions, don't really have experience in that kind of thing. At least not to that high of a level.
Mhm.
So part of me wonders, like, do they really think that like ramming everything into like that 4-month stretch between like May and September is really that good of an idea? Or do they have like some other thing? Like, are they planning to like release more information, like over the next couple months? Like whatever February has, whatever March is gonna have. Like, how much are we gonna see or hear about this thing before April? And how much are they going to show in April? It's just all really confusing to me, especially considering like behind closed doors what we know about it. Like, they're making millions and millions of consoles,
Mhm.
and yet showing us pretty much nothing. Like, I don't really know what the plan is. So
Yeah.
I guess that's a good thing. I mean, like, if some random fucking bozo off the street knew exactly what Nintendo's next play was going to be, something with the universe would be very, very wrong.
Mm.
But at the same time, it's like, do you really want this cycle to be so fast-paced right out the gate? I don't know.
I'll be excited for it if it happens like that, because that'll be fun. Because that's
I don't
kind of how
know,
the Switch
'cause-
One was, because it went from like game to game to game to game. Like we got games coming out
Well,
every
yeah,
month
but
and
it
a
had
half.
like that's true, but even then, the Switch One, it was like they spaced their things out, and it wasn't really like overbearing to that degree. Like,
Yeah.
for starters, I think the launch lineup of this console is going to blow the Switch One out of the water, just straight up.
Oh,
Like,
for
I don't
sure.
think I would get really much pushback for that.
Yeah.
Like everyone that's getting it on day one is definitely getting Mario Kart. If you care about Nintendo, you're getting a Mario Kart game, especially if you're like a day oneer for like the next gen consoles. You're getting
Yeah.
Mario Kart. But like then there's like ZA's coming out this year, Metroid's coming out this year, and then I am willing to bet that our holiday title is a 3D Mario, personally.
Same.
So there's 4 games right there, and 2 of them are big maybes on whether or not they're going to be Switch 2 exclusive. So the natural thing is then, well, you like a lot of what I'm thinking like really hinges on this whole 20 million units thing. But they want the system to be big, and how do you get a system to blow up? You make people buy it, especially in the first year.
Mhm.
Like, there's people that are eventually going to jump ship. Like, I know a bunch of people that are like, yeah, I'll buy it when Zelda comes out. I'll buy it when a new Xenoblade comes out. Those people are
Yeah.
content with sitting and waiting and holding on to their Switch 1 until, there's like a solid library to pick up. Like, yeah,
Mm.
I like Mario Kart. I like Metroid, but I'm really in it for Zelda. So, when that game comes out, then I'll jump over and then I'll, catch up whenever. And there's people like that. Like, not everyone's going to be a diehard day one fan.
Yeah.
So naturally, if things are cross-plat or like old gen, like ZA is probably just going to be a Switch 1 title. I'd imagine they're going to fill this year with first-party games like at least once a month, because that's what worked for the Switch 1. They've got like pretty much a flawless blueprint. Like, Mario Kart has proven to be an evergreen title, so naturally that's the thing they're going to show off first. It makes total sense. But given the fact that you're expecting, like, obviously, to people like us that are just trying to play some new games, on the surface, that sounds really exciting. Like, of course that would succeed. But then it's like, are you really expecting people to come out here and buy a console, and then 4 games, like, Mario Kart, 3D Mario, ZA, Metroid, plus whatever else they have going on this year, in the span of 6 months? Probably not. Like, if you want your system to blow up, you got to give it time to breathe. And that's
Yeah.
where I'm really confused. Where it's like, you want people to jump on the Switch 2 train, but you also need to get those other games for last gen out the window. So, you've already got some collision going on right there, where it's like, you want people to get the new hardware, but you don't want to isolate the, like, ownership base you already have. So there comes a choice where it's like, am I going to cater to the pre-existing audience with Switch 1 games and, of like potentially tank like the Switch 2's first year by just releasing games that are not on the platform specifically? Or are you going to release primarily Switch 2 games and then cut off your Switch 1 audience? Or are you going to release both at the same time and then drive prices up so people have to make a decision and you're competing with yourself anyway? So, they're really stuck between a rock and a hard place. I really was thinking that it was going to be way earlier, way shorter release cycle. Like, I can't imagine they would release it in April, right? Like, it's pretty much off the table for April now because of that direct, even though it's so early in the month. But realistically, it's got to be sometime in May. Like, I don't know. I really just don't understand how they plan on shipping software out. Like, obviously everyone is going to buy the new hardware because it's, the new hardware. Like, the Switch blew up. Most people just kind of want a stronger, newer Switch. And that's fine. But not everyone is going to be there day one. And it really just comes down to how much are they going to compete with themselves. Like, you have 2 libraries to build now. And as cool as backwards compatibility is, it's not a new prospect by any means. And I really don't think it's going to be that big of a selling point for the average consumer. It's like, I could buy a Switch 2 and play, Xenoblade and Donkey Kong and ZA on the new Switch, but it's $400. If I don't have to, I'm not going to. So you're giving up a lot of your year one and buyers for, and it's like, I'm not saying that's the wrong decision because, you got 160 million Switches out there. Give those people some money or give those people some games to play. Make yourself some money that way. But at the same time, the Switch 2 crowd is like, you really expect to ship 20 million units out in 6 months with a game library that's largely on last-gen hardware? Like, no. not really.
Yeah, no, I think what I don't see them. I don't want them releasing, like, at least first-party Switch titles after the 2 is out. I'm fine with the cross-gen, but if they do anything past that, personally, I think they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Be prepared for Pokemon.
Pokemon, I don't give a shit
I agree with you, but Pokemon
will do its own thing.
Pokemon's definitely doing that.
Pokemon
Everyone
can do
else.
its own thing. I don't care. Pokemon can do its own thing, but like outside of that, if they do stuff like that where they're dropping Switch 1 titles, unless they're like, ports of like older games or like remakes or something, then that I guess is fine. But like I don't want to see like new titles dropping on Switch 1 after the 2 comes
for
out.
Sure.
And I
the only game that I've
happens.
The only game I've heard rumored for Switch 1 in like later 2025 is like a port of Robobot.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's the only
I'm
thing.
for that.
I mean, like, yeah, Metroid and Pokemon are huge maybes. I really don't know what they're going to do for that. I think that Metroid might just be a Switch 2 only game.
Maybe. I see it being the cross-gen
solely for
game.
the idea that I think ZA might be a cross-gen game. As much as Pokemon loves to just sell to the bigger audience, I can't. They treat ZA differently, and they've also just kind of been shaken up the past couple years. Like, they've been super, super big on just selling tons of DLC, which hasn't really ever been a thing. Like, they've been bigger on sequels as opposed to DLC for the majority of their life, up until, like, the Switch era. And even then, it's like, in general, the Switch is new for Pokemon, because Pokemon's typically a handheld thing. If they had a choice between a home console and a handheld, they were always picking handheld for the mainline games. So, I really don't know. ZA is probably the most confusing title for me, that we know of. Because, like Metroid, they always try to launch their systems roughly with like a big single player and a big multiplayer game. As much as we hate it, 1-2 Switch was probably their big first party multiplayer game for the Switch 1. And, they typically do that kind of thing with their consoles. I feel like they're going to launch with a Mario Kart, and then they're going to launch with Metroid. The only caveat with that is I heard, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Nintendo podcast.
No.
But they were discussing Metroid, and they were like, they have spent so long developing Metroid that they don't even think it's going to be a launch title. They're of the opinion that they really, really want to sell Metroid. And so the best way to do that is drive up hype for a new hardware new system basically, because everyone's gonna buy the Switch 2,
Mm-hmm.
and in that first year, people are just kind of looking to fill up their library. You know, like I will buy anything year one for a new
Yep.
console because it's just exciting. It's a fun time. So what they're thinking is they're gonna hold Metroid until a couple months into the Switch 2, and there's gonna be a Switch 2 exclusive that they're gonna release in like summer or something. So you've got like two big hotspots in the year. It's summer and Christmas, and they are of the opinion that since they want Metroid to do well, they're not going to make it compete with Mario Kart because that's just a losing battle.
Yeah.
But they do really want to abuse the hype of the Switch 2 to get people to try new things. So they're thinking like a couple months in, we're going to get a Metroid Prime 4, and I totally see that. But yeah, honestly, there's a lot of different scenarios we can pick at all day, but by and large, I'm just confused. I really don't know what they plan on doing.
We'll see in April, I guess. Or
Hopefully
to be honest
before
with you,
then.
we'll probably see next month, because if this rumored Switch 1 Direct happens, we could see something like that. We could also see stuff from the Pokemon Direct as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Yeah,
February.
I think that we're definitely getting a Pokemon at
February
least.
is going to be like a big month for Switch 2 speculation, but at the end of the day, it's already the 25th of January. We only got to wait 2 months. And a little bit extra. So
I guess, but 2 months is still extremely long for a console in the position of the Switch 2. Like, everyone is kind of on board with, oh, they don't need to show that much. It's not that new. But then it's like, okay, well, if it's not that new, then why are we waiting half a year? Just show the damn console. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just like a restless man-child, but Jesus, like, we all agree that we're content with a more iterative take on Nintendo hardware. Like, we're all content with it not being some new revolutionary, completely from the ground up new concept. But you can't sit here and ice people out for months when we're all like, no one's even mad, dude. Like, we're not scared of you guys. There's no reason to be scared of us. Just show us the hardware. We're gonna buy it. Come on.
Yeah. I believe in them. And then also, that waiting for a little bit. This is more of a selfish take, but I'm glad that we potentially see this thing in like May, June, because then more people will be free, and I can, like I'll have more time to like set stuff up, spend more time playing the thing around launch.
I guess, but I don't even think that that's like a big factor. Like, even if it is coming out in May, or like, crazy scenario, it comes out like April 30th, right?
Yeah.
At that point, it's still gonna pop off during the summer. Like, literally.
Yeah.
I don't think it's coming out in April. I don't think they're pushing it back till summer. I'm really sticking to this May idea.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, pulling it back only serves to help them. You don't need as long of a hype cycle for a console as similar to the original as the Switch 2. Jesus. Literally, all that they need to do is, give us the price point and release date, show off a little bit what the new hardware can do, show us the new UI, like, just do console stuff. I can't imagine pack-in software is going to be a massive thing this time around either. They really don't need to show that much about the console. Like, they can give us, like, Nintendo thinks that everything is fake until it comes out of their mouth. So if they want to go over magnetic Joy-Cons, they can. I don't care. Realistically, all that it serves to do is help them if they release things earlier, because that just gives them more time to pad out their year with more system-selling games. It really just is about the software at this point.
Yeah.
The Switch is a tried and true piece of tech. It is a very reliable concept. It spawned an entire industry essentially behind it. Like, everyone's trying to get on the handheld gaming market now because of the Switch. They really do not need to make people wait. They don't need to play this game with us like they did the first time, because we just live in a different world now. Same reason they're not calling it the Super Nintendo Switch is the same reason we should know about it by now. Like, it doesn't really matter. People love the Switch. People love Nintendo. Like, they just did extremely well with the Switch 1. We don't need to be playing this game of cat and mouse with the Switch 2. Like, we don't need to be like, teasing it super, super lightly. Realistically, especially if we're looking at such a banger lineup of third parties that we're rumored to get. Like, we were just talking about how crammed their 2025 is going to be with just the first party releases. Can you imagine asking people to get both Metroid and Mario Kart and then Red Dead 2 and then Elden Ring on top of those? Like, huh? We're living in fairy tale land. Like, there is just no way they're going to stuff all of that into 6 months. There's just no way. Like, I just don't understand what is happening. It literally only serves to help them, is my opinion. And, maybe I'm just like a restless Nintendo fanboy that just wants the new console now, but realistically, they don't need to wait this long. What they need is to get the thing out the door and get people buying games for it. Because the more breathing time, like the more space you give any individual game, the more likely people are to get the next one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I heavily considered getting Xenoblade Year 1 because it was Year 1, and the last thing I bought was Odyssey 2 months prior. So, realistically, I wasn't ever having to choose between Xenoblade and something else, and it was still in Year 1. But that's going to be a different thing with the Switch 2. I mean, I'm definitely older now than I was then, so money matters a lot more to me. I can't just be going out and blowing it on video games whenever I want. So for me and for a lot of consumers now, it really does come down to how close your games are to each other. Because if I have to choose between Mario Kart and Metroid, I'm choosing Mario Kart. I'm sorry. I would love to play Metroid, but if I gotta choose, I'm picking Mario Kart every day of the week. And that's not something you want to hear from your consumers if you spent a decade making that game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you have a all-star lineup of titles. They have done so much work in the Switch era, bolstering like long dead franchises, strengthening their their already existing active ones. Like, everyone loves Smash. Mario Kart is still selling, but then they went and they brought back like pretty much every corner of the Mario RPG series. They went to town on Mario Party this generation. Pretty much, and Donkey Kong's entire discography is available on the Switch. Pikmin got revived, pretty much. Like, they've done so much work creating a library that people care about and want to buy. And I really don't think that it would do them much good to make people now pick between what they like more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've got people just now falling in love with Pikmin, just now falling in love with Splatoon. You put those two titles next to each other in November, and you're like, okay, now which one you like more? I know you like both of them, because you bought both of them on the first one, but now you gotta pick. So it's like, of course that's not gonna happen with everyone, but to suggest that that kind of approach is not going to affect sales is a little bit naive. So,
I don't see it being
like, we'll get around to it eventually.
I don't see it being a thing, like, past launch if they do it. Like, even if we do get, like, Metroid Mario Kart as launch titles, I don't see that happening again, outside of that.
Well, exactly.
Like, we'll get, like,
yeah, I would agree.
5-ish first-party Nintendo titles within 2025. And then we'll see a lot of other ones, like, the first full year of the Switch 2's life. Like, we could talk, like, oh, how are they going to cram all this type of stuff into 2025? They don't need to. They really don't. Like, we're going to have a Mario Kart for the holiday season. That's really all a lot of people are going to need. People like us that are, like, looking into, like, the future of the system, it's just going to feel like up until, May, June of 2026, it's still going to feel like year one. Like, the Wii U came out in November. The Wii came out in, I think, also around that, like, somewhat holiday point. The Switch 1 came out in March. Like, what are we doing there? Like, where did March come from? But, like, I like that they're kind of changing their approach a little bit. I want to see how it goes. But, we're getting the big stuff for holiday, for, like, the general consumers that'll be seeing this thing a few months into the life of it, but I don't see it being like, oh, we gotta cram all these games to get them in, 2025. I think we'll be fine. I think what the way it worked with the Switch One, where, excuse me, they went a month and a half from like Breath of the Wild to Mario Kart. Ooh, excuse me. It went from like Breath of the Wild to Mario Kart was like almost 2 months, and then Mario Kart into like what was the next one? Arms was again like a month and a half, month and 3/4. Into Splatoon was a month. Mario Rabbids was like the beginning of September. Fire Emblem Warriors and Mario Odyssey came out a week apart from each other, but like I think we'll be fine. I just think they're not gonna try and cram a bunch of things into 2025. I think they just want to get the thing out there. When they do, they'll have Mario Kart, they'll have Metroid, they'll have a 3D Mario for the holiday, and I think that's all they really need for quote-unquote year one, or like the first 6 months.
That's kind of true, but like, it really just comes down to how likely they are to compete with themselves. Like, obviously Metroid and Pokemon are coming out this year. Obviously Jesus Christ, Mario Kart is coming out this year. And throw 3D Mario on top of that, you got 4 games. It's just a matter of, which platform are they on? Are they on both? And then if you really want the Switch 2 to succeed, the natural answer would be to fill it with first parties, because the third party support, while strong, heavily relies on people double dipping.
No, for sure.
People have already played Elden Ring a ton. People have already played Red Dead 2 a ton. And it's like, me personally, I'm on there day one. I'm looking for the Master Chief Collection. I'm trying to play games from years past that I either never got to experience or haven't played in such a long time that it's like, if they show up on my doorstep, why not? So, I could just play Red Dead right now, but if it's on the Switch 2, I can wait a couple more months and I'll play it there. But, catering to your hardcore audience, catering to those stragglers that have just, never picked up, like, the top titles of years past. Like, Baldur's Gate was Game of the Year in 2023. Do you really think that a lot of people, like, it's a long-ass game, dude. Everyone that wanted to play it has probably played it by now, except for, like, me and, like, 10 other people. So it's like that's just why I'm worried, is that their library is it's either going to rely heavily on double dipping, or it's going to compete directly with Switch 1. There is really no in between unless they're willing to completely abandon one platform or the other for the rest of this year.
Well, that's what
if they don't want to
they
compete.
Need to do.
Well, yeah, but
is just drop Switch 1 when Switch 2 comes out.
Well, yeah, but that's not going to happen. At least not for those 2 games. Switch Metroid and Pokemon. It's hard to say, really, but I think there's an argument to be made that both of those will be playable on Switch 1. Especially given like how they handled Breath of the Wild and things like that, like Twilight Princess back in the GameCube Wii era. They typically make good on their promise when they say, if they say this is going to be playable on this hardware, they mean it. Like, if Metroid Prime 4 was a Wii U planned title and they said it's going to be playable on Wii U, and then that whole thing happened, then maybe not, right? Like, if that thing is going to come out 2020 and, we're 3 years out of the Wii U being dead and gone, I don't think they're going to go back and be like, hey, you can get it over here too. But with something like the Switch 1 and Switch 2, backwards compatibility is a thing, and it will matter to some people. But I think the bulk of those people that are buying the Switch 1, like those fucking 125 million people that are just like your average everyday consumer, they don't care. If they can play it on the old one, they will play it on the old one. So, it's like there's a decision to be made with pretty much half of the lineup for this year already. Assuming that we're getting 3D Mario this year, half of their first party lineup that we know about right now is going to have to choose one platform or the other, or risk competing with themselves. And, obviously the Switch 2 is coming off of the greatest success in Nintendo history outside of the DS. But you really don't want to be that kind of cocky with your business decisions, especially when the entire rest of your console kind of hinges on people buying games they've already played. So, we'll wait and see, but it is a little bit worrying to me. Like, worrying to me in the sense that I don't really know how the cycle is going to look, because it's like I am one of those exceptions. I am one of those people that's going to be there day one. I'm one of those Nintendo tryhard people. I'm going to be buying that stuff whenever I want or whenever I can afford it. That's just what I'm mostly worried about is, am I going to have to choose? I will buy pretty much everything that interests me during the first 12 months or so because it's exciting.
Yeah.
But when you start cramming things together like that, when you start, doing all that kind of stuff, like backwards compatibility won't matter for me. ZA and Metroid being available on Switch 1 is not going to stop me from getting Switch 2. But what will stop me is if you put two games super close together that I'm interested in. And what's going to matter for 90% of people is if you do those backwards compatible games, why buy a Switch 2? And, they're projecting a huge year one. So I think they are going to go down the route that you're suggesting where they just ditch the one after the two comes out.
Yeah, there's no other way to do
save
it.
for those handful of games. Yeah,
If
but
they-
they're gonna finish out they're gonna finish out the library.
They'll finish out the
they'll top it off with a
library.
Pokemon
Absolutely.
game.
Yeah, they'll top it off with the Pokemon. They'll do all of that, but they're not going to support it outside of that. Those games are going to be like swan songs to the Switch era that just happen to come out a little bit into the Switch 2's life. But outside of
I'm
that,
thinking the main reason I'm confused about those two is mostly because Nintendo likely considers those big releases this year. Like if we follow the blueprint of Switch 1 and it's like, a big first party game roughly every month or two.
Yeah.
They definitely consider those two games to be of that importance. They're not going to release, that game a week apart from 3D Mario. And it's like, it's normally that's not a factor, right? Switch 1 it wasn't a factor because there was no backwards compatibility. It wasn't competing with anything else. And so that blueprint was way easier to follow. But if you open with Mario Kart, a month down the line, you release a backwards compatible title or something of that nature, and then right after that you release another backwards compatible title, really, all that you're doing for those people on the fence is like, we got Mario Kart. That's it. And it's like, for us, that won't matter. For us, we're going to be deep into that Switch 2 storm. We're going to be playing those games on Switch 2 anyway. But for most people, they're looking down the next handful of months. I'm trying to get my coworkers to play it. I'm like, hey, there's a new Mario Kart. It's like, oh yeah, the new Pokemon game coming out. Do I need it for that too? No, you can play it on the one you got now. What about Metroid? Can I play Metroid in the new one? Well, you could, but you don't have to. So it's like,
Yeah, no,
if
for
you
sure.
think about it,
I understand.
if you think about it
coming
that
out
way,
where half the
it's-
first party offerings look like they're going to be coming out on Switch 1, but it I don't know. I see one being a cross-gen launch title, the other just being kind of a straggler somewhere in there, and then everything else will just be on Switch 2 at that point. And at that point, why not?
that's what
Why
I'm
not
hoping
get a
for.
Switch 2? Because then, even if you trade in your if you go sell your original Switch, then you still have your entire library of Switch 1 games.
that's what I'm saying. I want them to do it earlier. Ideally, when you've got a situation like this, you want to get Metroid and Pokemon out the door as fast as you can. Which is why I'm saying I don't really care about Xenoblade. I'm definitely convinced that we're going to hear something about Switch 2 between March and February, solely for the reason that Xenoblade not only isn't going to compete with Switch 2, but it will actively help Switch 2.
Yeah.
You got Metroid, you got Pokemon. We release in April, right? I'm pushing Mario Kart out the door, along with Pokemon on cross-plat, because it's Pokemon. They're definitely making it for Switch 1 anyway. Push those out the door. Maybe it gets an enhanced support for Switch 2. Doesn't matter. And then it's in May or June, that's when Metroid comes out. You've got the entire rest of your year, the next 6 months, playground for Switch 2. You've got the old one out of the way and done.
Yep.
The issue now is late May at best. You come out with Mario Kart, and then maybe Pokemon, maybe Metroid, not one or the other at most. You are now in the middle of June, and you have to release a cross-gen title or an old gen or a last-gen title, and that's probably going to be your thing for that month. So now you're halfway through summer. There's hardly a reason to buy your new console because it's got 1.5 games on it. And it's like, sure, that's plenty of time. Like, it's a very small gap. Like, you're arguing about, like, 6 months versus 7 months. But realistically, it's like, you also want to have a hype cycle for the games you're just announcing, too.
Mm-mm.
So, it's like, if this Robobot thing is to be believed, this is the last year of the Switch being on the market. It's going to get some remakes. It's going to get some ports. That kind of thing. Like, it's not going to have another big first-party original title coming out for it this year outside of those two.
Yeah.
But you want to get those things out as fast as possible.
For sure.
So I am just worried about that whole thing with us having to choose. I think that the best thing for them to do right now is just get all 3 of those games out in the open as fast as possible. Mario Kart could wait, honestly. If they want to launch with Metroid Prime 4, it could work. I just don't think they will because...
I could see Mario Kart being, like, middle of summer. That'd be kind of fun. Like, the console comes out in May, Metroid comes out, and then Mario Kart is, like, July.
I don't know, that would suck mega dick, but whatever. I'm trying to play some Mario Kart. Like, I don't know. If... That's also a thing with, like, you release Metroid Prime 4 on Switch 2 only, and that's your big launch title for the console, you're playing with fire a little bit, because
that's why I think
already
Mario
iterative
Kart's gonna be
console, and
launched.
then Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like, just by nature, by the fact that it's probably going to be Mario Kart, you're losing a month plus to get your last-gen games out. So, they're either going to release super close together, or the Switch 2 is going to have some dry exclusives for, quote-unquote, exclusives for the first 3 months or so.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll see how it goes down.
We will see what happens.
It won't matter for me either way. I'm just spitballing. Anyway, so we do want to get these episodes a little bit shorter. So I want to close out pretty soon. I think we're about an hour in, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into it more next episode or the episode after. But what are you thinking about Mario Kart?
I'm very excited. I'm very, like actually just finally, after 11 years, we have visual, we have confirmation that this thing is real. We are finally getting out of the trenches of 8, and 24 Racers sounds like the most chaotic thing they could have ever done, and I love it. I am so excited for that.
For sure. I don't know, like, the 24 Racers, I cannot wait for that. Part of me thinks it's not real still. Like, part of me is looking at it and be like, oh, that's probably just for, like, time trial ghost or something. I don't know. I'm thinking of, like, every way that it could not come true because I want it so badly that I'm just convinced, like, there's got to be a catch, right? Like, it's not actually 24 people. It's Double Dash and you've got a partner. It's the 12. It's, like, the normal 12, but you've got an assist or something like that. I don't know. But... I don't know. I just cannot wait for 24 Racers. I'm so excited to see what the item pool is like in this next one.
Yeah.
I just want that damn coin gone. And everything else. Dude, I want so many Wii items back.
Yeah.
I want the Mega Mushroom. I want Thundercloud. I want Pow Block. I want all of that back. Those things are so much fun. And it's like, I think most of us are just ready for a new Mario Kart at this point. It's just,
most
dude,
of us,
I
bro.
can't.
It's crazy because people are still, like, buying 8 Deluxe. Like, people are still, like, walking in and purchasing that game for the first time. And it's like, it's been 11 years.
Yeah, they heard the new one's coming out, bro. They gotta get good. I have a new Mario. Like, dude, I have, like, it's real. It's a real phenomenon. Like, I played more Brawl in the week leading up to Smash 4 than I did the entire time before that.
Same. And we're seeing it now, too. Like, in our friend group, we're playing a lot more 8 Deluxe.
Right?
Like,
that
dude,
is we're getting, like,
the first time, that's the first time I've played a team battle online, or just ever, in years. And just...
It's crazy.
It's, like, it's so exciting, because it lets you go back and, like, revisit the stuff that you have now, and it's, like, a little bittersweet, because, like, we're playing 8 Deluxe, and it's like, wow, we've been playing this game for so long, and it's finally coming to a close. And it's just like, it makes me... And it's like, it makes me so excited, yet also, like, super curious about what they're gonna change in this next game. Like, you see, like, the drift animation looks way more fluid. Like, there's more squash and stretch in there in the animation. Like, it looks like they're genuinely putting a lot of heart and effort into this game from that little teaser alone. Like, we saw 16 carts at once. Even though the 24 grid was there, we only got a visual on 16 carts, but we did get 16 characters confirmed out of that. Like, you know, Pauline's in there, Rosalina's in there, Donkey Kong got updated to the, like, movie design, which I don't know how I feel about, but it's there. I'm really excited to see what tracks they add. I really want them to go down the route of, like, you know, more, like, mainline Mario locations, but regardless, I'm excited for new courses that aren't things like Ninja Hideaway or, you know, what's the one? Sky High Sunday.
One?
The bathtub one is so good. I love that track, but like
that one is ass. I'd rather play on Sky High Sunday every day of the week.
That is insane. That is probably one of the craziest takes I've ever heard in my life. Anyway, I'm really interested to see if they keep anti-gravity in this game.
I think they will. Honestly, okay.
It's crazy that we're finally talking about that being like a thing, because it's been 11 years, and it's like, oh, we might not see anti-gravity in the next one. This game came out in 2014, and it's like we're just now, we're finally starting to get to that point where, oh, it's like 7, 8 had the glider and underwater sections from 7. Do we see the anti-gravity return as well? I believe we do. I don't see a world where they don't do it, especially because, you know, it was featured in the movie.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I hate the movie, dude.
It's like, I know where their heads are at a little bit with that. We'll probably see anti-gravity return.
What new gimmick, though?
Yeah, that's the other big thing. It's like anti-gravity was so huge for track design, like.
I've heard people talk about the boost mechanic. Like you're gonna have like a boost meter like that you can activate anytime because of like the gas tank on the side of the standard cart.
That's right.
I don't really know how much weight that holds, but it's a cool idea.
It'd be cool to see like that nitro meter, like the arcade racers get brought over.
I also want them to experiment with like a new cup class, like not like 250cc, but like reversed, right? Yeah. Like what they did in DS with the mission mode where you drive backwards. It's like mirror mode but cooler. I don't know. I would do that. Any single player offerings like acceptable? I don't know. I just like realistically we have to have the Mario Kart conversation like we do with Ultimate, right? Like where do they go after 8? That game has 130 tracks in it. Like, what? How much are we getting? Like, how big is this game?
But Base 8 was just another Mario Kart game. Remember, this isn't like a Smash Ultimate where they threw all their, like, big stuff out in one go. 8 was, you know, just another Mario Kart. But... And then 8 Deluxe just kind of was like, you know what? Let's throw all this stuff that we put in Tour into this game. And yeah, it looks big, but I genuinely believe with things like the 24-player races... the amount of tracks they were able to fit into 8 Deluxe just on their own, and you know the upgraded size in the rumored upgraded size in memory cards, like not memory cards, but like the game cards being able to hold, being able to hold 64 gigabytes. I'm looking it up now on my Switch. Let me see, manage software. How much data does Mario Kart 8 Deluxe put in? Only 4 gigabytes.
That's crazy.
Unless the booster course pass is its own thing, there's only 4 gigabytes between the booster course pass and...
That's what I'm saying, though. Like, it's... Obviously, they handled it way differently. Like, Smash Ultimate, that game's whole selling point was the idea that everything is back, right?
Yeah, but
and 8 Deluxe did not start that way, but you gotta remember, 8 is... far and away the most popular Switch game.
Yep.
And everyone knows the DLC is there. It's not like, you know, your average Joe is not gonna like care about that. They're just thinking, well, the last one I played had 128 courses, and this shit got like 16.
No, absolutely. So, but I'm saying they can definitely go up in a lot of areas. I feel like single player offerings is a big one. The character roster can be greatly expanded on. Tracks, I see them going higher. I see them making more tracks.
I don't know about that.
I don't see like, them maybe DLC.
In terms of Mario Kart, I don't even care about the roster all that much.
No, I know.
In terms of like the character. I think
roster's
like
not
the
as
tracks
important as
are
the
what
track
people are-
selection for sure. I also think they can, scale up battle mode as well. More than 8 maps would be pretty cool.
Mhm.
Like
I'm thinking like obviously for this next one, I think at least they're gonna decrease the tracks. I don't think we're coming out with 128 tracks out the gate for sure. I think we're getting like half of that at most. I think that game's gonna launch with like 5 or 6 cups in the Nitro, and then like the Retro cups.
I could see that.
Right?
I think
Like 10 to 12 cups total, and they can add on to it with DLC.
no, for
That's
sure.
kind of what I'm thinking.
My
I think
line
it's
of
gonna rely
thinking
super,
is,
super
like-
heavily on just like massive new tracks. Like
No, for
the new tracks are
sure.
gonna be so huge, and like they're probably just gonna be the goofiest thing you've ever played on.
I'm so excited to see that. That's gonna be crazy cool to see. But my line of thinking is that again, it's been so long since the last mainline Mario Kart, and even if we factor in things like the Booster Course Pass, that was what's it called? Ported mostly from Tour. There's not as there. I'm no game dev, of course. I gotta preface by saying that, but there's no way that porting all those tracks from Tour took more effort than what they did in the base game in 3 years, maybe 6. I don't know how their dev cycles work between games, but
You're saying like
handheld
it's easier to take what's on tour than it is to like
so like
make original stuff?
I don't know how the dev team split up like game releases like between Mario Kart Wii, Mario Kart 7, and Mario Kart 8, but they either went 1 to 1 to 1, and there was a 3-year gap, and like there was a 3-year development for each game roughly, or they had a handheld sector and it was like a 6-year gap. 8 Deluxe came out in 8 Deluxe came out in 2017, and so did ARMS. And ARMS is significant because both of those games were made by the same dev teams. ARMS came out in June of 2017. It's been 7 years.
Are they not working on anything other than ARMS?
Not that I'm aware of. Last I checked, there was
they're
like
definitely not making ARMS. Dude, that shit sucks.
I'm so mad about
Sorry.
that. Anyway, what's it called? Last I checked, I see like photos on Twitter of like a graph, and it's like Nintendo dev teams like 1, 2, 3, 4, like Nintendo team 1, 2, 3, like that whole thing, and there was literally just a sector for Mario Kart and ARMS. And unless they're hiding another like crazy new IP or something like that, they've had roughly 7 years to work on this game. And with the amount of money Nintendo has now, with the amount of time they've had, there's no way this game isn't huge off launch.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I see it. That's the way I'm feeling. Because if they're doing 24 racers, like if they're showing that to us out the gate, that gives me like a lot of excitement for what else they're adding to this game.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to set myself up for disappointment, so I'm not going to expect anything on the level of 8 in terms of like crack content out the gate. But and especially given that it's not like 7 years of them working on only this. Like,
oh no, yeah.
I imagine obviously they did the Booster Course Pass. I'd imagine they had some hand in making Tour itself. I don't know if that's a separate team. I can't imagine it's that different.
It probably is, because DNA is like the mobile dev that Nintendo's partnered with for a while, and a lot of the assets are kind of ripped from like either 8 or 7, mostly 8 probably. But like it feels like Mario Kart
I don't really
7,
know
like,
how that all works, because I feel like I don't know if Nintendo does work with like some kind of second party like Game Freak, they usually work pretty closely with them.
Oh no, absolutely.
And
but
I
it's
don't
not
like
as...
I don't want to say that they've worked on Tour like, oh, these people have never like, this game is like 2 years, 3 years old at maximum. They've been working on Tour and the Booster Course Pass, but I don't want to say all that because it's obviously not true. But I also don't want to say that they've had 7 years to make this, because I have no clue what goes into Tour or how many people are involved, or how many of those people are also working on 8.
I could be totally
wrong
in all this, but just like as an outsider looking in and seeing a couple of like insider like things, that's what makes sense to me. I could be totally wrong, but just from the way I see it, it's been so long since the last one.
Yeah,
I
definitely
want to
think
see
that
something
they're
huge.
going for. Yeah, I don't think. Hmm. Yeah, I'm kind of content with this 10 to 12 cups total for base game.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna. You can expect like 2 or 3 more maps for battle mode, maybe a mission mode. I feel like a lot of the hook of this new game is going to be look at all the crazy items we got and look at how many people you can hit with them.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I feel like if you tried to like on day one, they're gonna have like a lobby, right? You got 23 people bunched up right next to each other. You got one guy with a shock, and you're gonna like just blow your switch up. Like that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's time to round out. Do you have any final thoughts or any ideas you want to share before we close out?
For sure. I just, regardless of all the ups and downs, the what we know, what we don't, what we're worried about, all that, it just feels so good to be in the position of we are getting a new console soon. That pre-launch console hype cycle. I will touch on this in one of our future episodes where we have I have an idea for like I want to reminisce on like
Probably the next one, right?
probably the next one, but like I want to reminisce on like what the Switch 1 was like, that whole thing, like my experiences, a lot of that stuff. That pre-release hype cycle, that big community feeling, I just like that's something I've missed. And it like, prime example, C&D, Captain Nintendo Dude in the Switch line, that was a huge deal. And then he like made like separate little vlog series for things like Mario Kart and like other games like Tears of the Kingdom. He did he waited outside a couple days. We haven't heard much from him in recent, but I mean it'd be cool to see him come back for that. But I just like, my point is the games don't feel as monumental as the release of new hardware. And with something like an Xbox Series X or a PS5, that was of course pretty big. People were looking for those forever, and there was like such limited stock, partially due to COVID. But like, even then, it's like those consoles. You can go with their
Nintendo,
way with
man.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like
Nintendo's a whole different ballgame.
Nintendo consoles spark so much hype just off of the fact that they're new Nintendo consoles. Like you don't get that as much from Xbox or PlayStation.
That's what I was saying in the beginning.
That's
what I
just
was saying in the beginning.
You're
gonna get a stronger, goofier looking PlayStation with a beefier version of the controller you had last year. Nintendo, you're getting some wacky shit. We were playing with cardboard in 2017. Like
that was
I don't know.
crazy.
That's what makes Nintendo so special, dude. Like dude. Labo 2's coming out this year. I don't know. I'm gonna be wearing 3D glasses and getting into fist fights with VR Mario. I don't know, dude. Whatever. Like, it's so different now.
Yeah, it is very different. But one thing remains the same, and I think it's that this is a very exciting time to just not even just be a Nintendo fan, but a fan of games in general. It's not often that we get something as monumental and as hype as this. And, for them to, hit it two console generations in a row, the Wii U kind of tanked, the Wii U kind of fumbled, but it feels like regardless of, like, launch timing and whatever they decide to do with their first-party lineup moving forward, it looks like they're setting up for another success. Might not be as big as the Switch 1, but there's no way they fumble as hard as the Wii U. Like, regardless, it's gonna be a big deal to have a Switch 2, just seeing it come out. And I really hope that not only the community factor is able to play a bigger role, and I'm able to experience it more in person than I was with the Switch 1, but just having people to get excited with it over has been the thing I've been the most excited to see. Just, I made a video about this a couple days ago on my main channel, but it really is like a nice like checkpoint to see how much has happened since the last launch. Oh boy, it's been 8 years. Graduated from high school. I'm getting ready to graduate from college, and I've become so much more proud of myself as a person in those 8 years. I've become a lot more confident in myself. back then I didn't have a lot of people to hype about the Switch with. Like all of my friends were, like more dismissive of it, and the only person I really had to, scream about it with was my brother. And like we went through everything together. We were both like, day one for games like ARMS and Splatoon, and hell, we even went into Kirby Star Allies in 2018. I still have that photo, but just the difference between then and now, and not only is like my brother like getting increasingly more excited for the console, which is always nice to see, but I have people like Kevin, people like Ian, people like Caitlin and Cameron and Kojo, like all of these people that are like as into this type of stuff as I am, and just being able to get a group of people together and just get excited over this. It's like it's a lot more sentimental to me than probably a lot of people will view it, but it's one of those things for me where it's not just about the console. It's about the experiences that I have made with the previous, and we will touch on that next episode when we talk about that whole thing in depth, but I'm also extremely excited for what's to come.
For sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to like obviously like that the whole hype cycle starting over. Like it was such a pivotal point in my life back then. Like just, I enjoy the whole like I have a big group of friends now, but like part of the reason the Switch one was special to me is like I got it, I ran up to my room, I called my cousin Cameron on FaceTime and just like unboxed it with him right there. And literally for the entire next 2 months, we just got on FaceTime after school and we would just play Zelda on FaceTime. Like I had to like explain to him how to beat a divine beast. It was so cool.
That's
and
awesome.
It's like I don't know. I'm just looking forward to all of that to start over. Just like the cycle begins anew essentially.
Yeah.
Like remember back in like 2017, 2018 and then a little bit into 2019 when every direct was a banger. Like just
Yes.
everything they were saying was like some heat.
Yeah, like
I'm so looking forward to that again.
I know, we're like in that point where we're gonna see all these third-party games, and it's gonna be like, bam, Red Dead 2, bam, Final Fantasy 7, bam, Elden Ring. Like if that all rumor stuff is to be believed, they pad that out over the next few like couple of like directs. That's huge.
We heard
like,
just which one died. That gets 5 big booms.
It's gonna be so fun, not only to get to experience this next console, but to experience it with a bunch of people, instead of just by myself or with one other person. And not to say like I don't value that. Like sometimes it's nice to be in that sort of spot, but just like having people that I can gush about this sort of stuff with whenever. Like genuinely, Kevin, you and I are like on the same wavelength for this type of thing. For the big stuff. We have our differences, we have our opinions, but we're just kind of like on that wave. It's like, dude, it's coming, it's happening, I can't wait, I need to be there day one. Like it's we both kind of look at we both kind of get excited over a lot of the same things, like how big the directs are going to be and like like sort of stuff like that. And it's very refreshing to have that going into a hype cycle for once, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. But just overall, like the types of things that like I'm also excited for what's gonna be different about this time. Like us being older now, we're able to go out and do more things. I'm gonna be able to like go out and get more accessories for it. We're gonna be able to like stuff like Riptide. If we have this thing by the time Riptide happens, that's gonna be so much fun. But like it's nice to see it's nice to bring it all back to the pre-release. And like bring it all back to that feeling of like, wow, I'm so excited for this new era. But it's also nice to see the differences. And I'm so excited to see where this era takes us.
For sure. Obviously, next episode is probably going to be the Switch 1 retrospective. We'll dig into a lot more of what we want to see the same of, what we want to see differently. Yeah. But I'm super happy that we're in this position again. Hopefully next time we record after that one, there's more new stuff to talk about, but we'll see. April can't come soon enough.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
We'll play it by ear. We'll see. We can talk forever.
Absolutely.
So, we'll figure out something to talk about for sure.
Absolutely.
You want to sign us off?
Sure. We'll
Go
figure
for it.
we'll figure this out one day. Excuse me. But yeah, thank y'all for listening. This has been Schmendy and Arcadia. We'll catch you next time.